The words split the air like a hairline crack in ice. Clean. Mean. It moved through chandelier light and left a cold seam in the glow. Hey, Blakiego serve. Laughter slid over marble, bright and eager, the way knives sometimes shine before they cut. Heat gathered under the chandeliers, under the string quartet's lamps, under the shoulders of men steamed in tuxedos. The room smelled like citrus polish and chilled champagne, with a vein of wilted roses near the dais, where money went to pretend it was grace. Danielle did not move. Her dress was ivory and simple. The line at her throat was unadorned. She placed her hand on the table's edge and felt the lacquer's chill, the tiny vibrations from 100 glasses meeting 100 rings. She lifted her phone, thumb finding a screen that was already alive. Priority 1, she said, soft, deliberate. The heel of her other hand pressed the seam of her dress. A small anchor tucked where the room couldn't see. A violinist missed a slip of bow and recovered. A waiter checked his tray and pretended he hadn't. A security guard at the entrance, decent shoes, polished badge, shifted weight, and looked at no one in particular, because looking is a commitment. Which catering company? A tall man called, raising his flute like a baton. If you're quick, we might tip. The pearls beside him gleamed in a tight noose at a woman's throat. She pointed toward Danielle with 2 fingers, the mannerly version of a shove. Sweetheart, this is for investors. Danielle raised the phone a fraction, as if to hear better. Proceed, she said into the line. The words sounded like a next step placed on ground she owned. Allison Reeves, near the stage, slid her phone from a clutch. With one careful breath, a red dot woke. She framed Danielle in the notch between 2 champagne flutes, where bokeh turned chandelier shards into a soft field of stars. The camera hummed faintly, her thumb steadied. Sweat cooled under the leather strap against her wrist. Security, the tall man said. He stretched the vowel, an old habit of people who thought time obeyed them. The guard started a slow 2 paces, stopped. Orders on paper are easy. On marble they grow faces. His earpiece murmured some neutral room tone instruction. He didn't lift his hand yet. The woman with pearl's eyes, like she organized holidays, closed the gap instead. Her perfume was white flowers with a metallic echo. Pass, she said. Danielle held out her wrist. The paper band was clean and printed. The woman's nails were immaculate. The rip sounded like silk, tearing in a theater where everyone paid extra to be seated close. Get her out, the woman said, holding both halves like a trophy. The quartet went a beat late into the bridge, corrected with the discipline of professionals. Someone's laugh arrived on delay and died in the wrong place. Danielle didn't blink. She nodded at the halves. Credentials are with her. She lifted the phone again. Move the capital. She told the line. Harlow, skip the signing. A ripple ran across the room. Heads bent, screens lit, mouths rounded without words. The chandelier light sharpened same bulbs. Different honesty. Is this a bit? The tall man asked to no one, to the air, to the part of himself that could still imagine a universe arranged for him. He clicked his tongue twice and tried humor. You break character. We still tip. Danielle's gaze held. A small muscle moved once along her jaw. Less anger than calibration. Phase 2, she said. Allison shifted on the balls of her feet. She found the mirror column on Danielle's left and slid a half step to catch the reflection. Pearls. Torn pass. The line of Danielle's cheek in the same rectangle. Truth layered itself without help. The guard came close enough to be accountable, not close enough to make a mistake. Ma'am, I'll need to see your... Gone, Danielle said, gentle, nodding at the halves. She can lend them back if she wants this to be easier. The Pearl Woman's smile was sugar-coated stone. We can do this the easy way. You picked hard, Danielle said. The waiter with the water tray floated by. He looked at the torn band, at Danielle, at the guard, and kept moving with a jaw that had decided something he wouldn't say out loud. Which table hired you? The tall man tried again. His smirk wanted to be a lesson. If you hurry? Sir, the guard said, the word placed like a wedge between a man and the mistake he was building. He kept his shoulders squared to the crowd, to the phones. Sweat found the seam under his collar. He swallowed and measured his next inch. The room's air system sent a long, calm breath through the ducts. Glass caught light like a row of bright eyes. Allison heard the hum and marked it. The night's quiet signature. A steady machine putting its own heartbeat beneath the scene. Danielle tilted the phone. Rebecca, she said. Status. Counsel online. The voice answered velvet on steel. Escrow Kiwed. One authorization pending Joel's deputy. 8 minutes. Danielle's thumb tapped. She did not frown. Something behind her eyes. Slow. Arithmetic. Precise. Moved. And settled. Press line independent of transfer. Carries on values breach. Rebecca said. Send in 10. Danielle answered. The pearls leaned forward until the perfume was a little too close. People like you always try to slip in where you don't belong. Allison's lens barely breathed. She felt the sentence like grit under a tooth. That tiny stone that changes how you chew. She widened a hair to keep the mirrored column in the shot. The tall man lifted his chin. Officer, remove her. On what grounds? Danielle asked the guard. Still gentle. Still polite. Voice pitched to carry without raised volume. Fraud. The tall man supplied. Impersonación. Pick one. Danielle said. I prefer case law. You're making a scene. Beryl said. Soft smile. Hard eyes. You tore one. Danielle said. Allison edged toward a better line. 2 inches right. Danielle said without turning. Let them read. Allison moved 2 inches. In the mirror. All 3 pearls. Halves. Danielle aligned in crisp symmetry. A recorded triptych. The kind of image that ends a debate. 5. Rebecca said in Danielle's ear. A PR woman in Navy typed sorrow into her notes and erased it letter by letter. A donor couple leaned together until their foreheads nearly touched. The quartet leader lifted her bow a finger's width off the string, waiting for the room to decide what song it was. 2. The tall man smiled like a coin. Game over. Not a game, Danielle said. Un audit. Silence came in and put its hand on the chandelier. The metal seemed to flex, an imagined sound, as if weight had just been added to the light. 1. Sending, Rebecca said. The chime that followed was small and exact. Then another. Then all of them marble ringing with alerts, pockets, lighting like a low sky in summer. The glow on faces changed first blue, then bluer. People read, people swallowed, people reached for a sentence and found a period. Danielle didn't check her screen. She never liked to confirm a thing she'd already made happen. She watched the room instead. It rearranged itself with the quiet efficiency of water finding a new channel. Impossible. The tall man told his phone. The phone declined to be intimidated. The Pearl Woman's fingers tightened until the half-moons pressed white. Privacy, she said to a random camera. This is... Allison tracked right to keep Danielle in frame as the guard took one step back. Not an apology, a correction. He put his hand on his radio and let go. He felt the seam between duty and performance and chose the less dramatic side. Officer, Danielle said. The word cool and courteous. You don't have to do anything else tonight. Yes, ma'am, he said. The syllables came out like a man pronouncing his own name correctly For the first time all evening, the tall man's laugh tried again and broke in the second beat. You can't redirect anything from a ballroom. You tore a pass. Danielle said, we executed a policy. It didn't land like a cleverness. It landed like furniture. Vendor notices que well. Rebecca said, hold. Danielle said, proof in two. A photographer up on the mezzanine lifted his camera and took a wide chairs to the left, a shifting crowd to the right, a clean lane opening from Danielle to the doors like the aisle you don't plan for but need. Why? Pearls asked. The word came out almost human, the way questions do when they run out of alibis. Because men with keys keep locking doors someone else paid for, Danielle said. Because dignity isn't an RSVP you misplace when it's dark. The chandelier threw light evenly. It had done that all night. Only now did people seem to notice it wasn't choosing sides. It was showing them. Deputy signed. Rebecca said. Escrow released. Confirmed. Send. Danielle answered. Portal revoke. Legal GC'd. Another chime front moved through the room. Heads bowed again. A navy-suited advisor whispered into a phone that answered with nobody's forgiveness. The PR woman put her tablet against her chest like a shield and breathed once slowly, the way people do when they realize the right word is none. The tall man tried to aim his voice at the ceiling and hit his own shoes. You'll be sued. By whom? Danielle said. For what? He didn't say. He chewed on a future that no longer included him as the narrator. Allison lowered her lens an inch and caught the smallest movement at Danielle's mouth. Almost not a smile, not victory, recognition. The part where a machine does exactly what you built it to do. This isn't a win, Danielle said. More to the architecture than to the ring that had failed to become a wall. It's a correction, a quiet beat. In it, the air system hummed its steady, indifferent hymn. Someone's bracelet clicked against a flute. Down the hall, a service door whispered shut and stayed shut, respectful as a well-trained extra. The moment held like a breath in a long hallway, and then the room began to move. Not fast, not panic. The way a tide decides. People stepped aside, without performance. Phones rose higher, some with shame that arrived late to the party. The light stayed exact. Danielle turned her shoulders a degree toward the exit. Behind her, the guard shifted his stance to make space, where space should have been all along. Ahead of her, the chandelier flung the same brightness it had flung for the joke. For the rip, for the call, the only difference now was the eyes that stood in it. Danielle slid the phone down from her ear. Let's proceed, she said to no one. And to the room, her heels answered, tick, tick. The sound of a clock returning to itself. Light held its posture like a verdict pinned to the ceiling. Phones lit in pockets, blue squares winking through tux jacket wool and sequined clutches. The glow washed faces a colder shade, as if the chandelier had switched from flattery to cross-examination. Without asking permission from the room, the guard stopped, pretending to breathe like furniture. He eased 2 inches left, out of the collision lane, and the motion drew a hairline seam in the crowd that kept widening. Sweat rolled from his temple into the rim of his ear, and he touched the radio just to feel something that answered back without demanding he choose a side. Allison kept her lens steady. She inhaled for 4, exhaled for 6, the way an EMT taught her once on a nothing assignment that ended with CPR on a sidewalk. The frame held Danielle in the notch of the mirrored column. Pearls and torn pass halves stacked behind her like a triple exposure that refused to lie. The chandelier snowing light over every angle. Shut that off. A man hissed at Allison. He wore a tux that fit like inheritance. She didn't answer, because the camera had learned long ago that the right silence makes a better witness than any sentence meant to win. Chimes rolled across the floor. 1, then 3, then a shiver of them. Thumbs flicked, throats worked, shoulders tightened in unison, the way schools of fish do when a shark redraws the water. On screens, a narrow font, a time stamp, words that didn't argue partnership terminated, capital redirected, effective immediately. The tall man swallowed his grin until it cut his lip. Defamation, he told the air, trying to lend it a degree. His hand twitched toward his tie, and the knot told the truth he wouldn't. He was choking on a room that no longer believed his volume. Danielle turned her head a fraction. She wasn't smiling. Her mouth made a small, private adjustment. The look of a mason checking the level on a wall everyone else thought was already straight. Then she put her attention back, where it mattered, on the people who had tried to write her name off the guest list. With a sound, Pearls leaned forward. Breath, sweet. Voice sweeter. You will answer for this. The pearls clicked once at her throat, and for the first time their music sounded cheap. A necklace trying to keep time in a room that had found another drummer. Officer, Danielle said, not looking at the guard. Thank you. He dipped his chin, one nod that admitted the obvious and absolved nothing, and repositioned his body so he wasn't the hinge in anyone else's door. A waiter with a tray of seltzer drifted to the edge of the circle. He wasn't brave enough to stop, but he didn't speed up either. Condensation beaded the glasses like nervous sweat. Mint leaves slick and green in the florist light. A clean smell cutting through perfume, as if the room remembered what fresh air meant. Which table hired you? The tall man said again, lower now, aiming for private injury. His friends watched him with tight mouth. Allison's camera moved an inch and caught the man's left hand, a white seam where a ring should have lived, a tan line framed by skin. He'd never show on purpose, an absence telling on him harder than any adjective. A violinist rested her bow on her knee. She watched Danielle, the way artists watch. Foundations being poured. Someone from the mezzanine took a wide shot that would age well. Left side already losing guests, right side gaining them. A clean diagonal like weather moving across the map. Counsel acknowledged. Rebecca said into Danielle's ear, Vendor notices que wed. To roll on your mark. The lines calm, scratched, gentle at the night, like a key turning in a lock a stranger hadn't noticed installed. 2 minutes, Danielle said. She checked the positions the way a driver checks mirrors before changing lanes. Her eyes flicked to the bar, to the door, to Allison's lens, to the guard's stance, to the small cluster of Harlow executives who were standing without standing out. Posture soft and ready as an open hand. The pearls smiled a museum smile. We serve communities, she said, as if a sentence could launder a night. Her thumb worried the torn pass like a rosary. One half, then the other, the paper bowing at the crease, the chandelier putting a little fever on the polish of her nails. People saw, the waiter murmured behind the seltzer. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was letting the world know he'd been here when it counted. He passed on, his shoulder grazing Allison's, a transfer of static that cracked like a counted beat in both their bones. Ma'am, the guard said, finding language that didn't apologize and didn't accuse. Do you need an escort to wherever you're going? He kept his hands visible, palms empty, like a man entering church after the sermon. But before the choir stopped humming, I'm fine, Danielle said. Her voice didn't carry. The room carried it. She angled the phone as if warming it against her cheek. But the screen had gone black. Call ended the tool back to being a piece of glass, the chandelier claimed as its own. The tall man tried one more pose. You can't pull a deal mid-toast. He said it like people say gravity when they walk into a swimming pool. It already moved. Danielle said 3 words. Plain. the kind of notice stamped on forms in back offices, where clerks don't look up while changing futures. Her shoulders settled by a degree. Breath left her ribs like a measured pour, the glass filling just enough to keep from spilling. Medroom. A photographer coughed. On contact with air, the sound flipped into a hush again. In that quiet, the chandelier made its own small noise, the electric thrum of many bulbs, agreeing to do one thing well. An audit disguised as light, steady and unembarrassed by scrutiny. Allison checked her battery, checked her spare, checked the tiny fleck of lint in the corner of her lens, and blew it away. Her producer's text crawled up the screen. "What do you have?" 2 lines don't overcut, and she ignored them with the practiced rudeness of someone who trusts she'll earn forgiveness with the real officer. Perel said, the word painted in sugar, "We will press charges." The last syllables trembled, not from fear, but from distance. She was talking to a future that refused to answer, while so many phones were listening. Against her, the guard asked. He already knew the answer. He just wanted to stack it next to the frame Allison had, and the push alerts everyone else did. He wanted the ledger to say the thing out loud. For fraud, the tall man said. For crashing a private event, he didn't say the quiet part, which was everywhere, heavy as humidity. You don't belong because the chandelier, damn it, had made whispering expensive. Phase 3. Rebecca asked, voice a wire held taut between 2 clean decisions. On your word. She had a pen in her hand in a room across town and pressed its tip into paper without writing. A small ritual that let the body look as busy as the brain. Proceed, Danielle said. Her eyes never left the semicircle. She watched posture for meaning, watched wrists for tells, watched the prince's smile trying hard to be a king's. The PR woman arrived breathless with a sentence that could have been borrowed from any decade. We'll have a statement shortly. She held her tablet like a shield, and didn't realize the reflection showed the torn pass again, the chandelier silvering the screen into a confession. Allison moved 2 steps, then 1, to keep a column of sight on the Harlow table. A server placed 2 fresh flutes there, quiet as rain starting on a hood. One of the executives lifted his glass barely, a nod across general distance toward Danielle. That wasn't celebration. It was jurisdiction recognized. You're done here, the tall man said. He meant leave, but it sounded like please. I paid for the room, Danielle said, and didn't add. And when I didn't, I still paid for it because some truths prefer to lean in a doorway with their arms folded and wait. Rebecca's voice returned to the shell of her ear. Notices sent, she said. Acknowledgements incoming first wave green. 2 waits. Both minor, both expected. Good, Danielle said. Her gaze slid to the guard and rested for half a heartbeat. The kindness of including him in the map that had just been redrawn. He shifted his weight the way men do when they stand next to a thing they respect. Something old unclenched in his jaw. A donor couple rose and left 2 place cards like little tombstones. By the dais, a florist adjusted a spray. No one would remember next week. The quartet let their bows hover a whisper above strings. The musical equivalent of holding a door without pushing. The pearls lifted her chin again. You don't get to humiliate us in public, she said. Her voice trembled on the last vowel when it hit the chandelier's cold light and came back thinner than it left. Danielle didn't answer. Some responses are better left to architecture. She let the room do the math actions in one column, receipts in the other, and in the subtraction, found a number big enough to move stock. Allison tipped the lens down for a breath, a still of shoes on marble, a portrait of 3 brands of leather equally shiny and not equally clean. She pushed back to eye level as Danielle pivoted, giving the camera the gift nobody else gave it. Profile, chin, shoulder, a seam of light along the arm where the ivory met skin. No wobble, no hurry. If grace were a tactic and not a temperament, it would look like that. Ma'am, the guard said, very softly. He didn't know what he meant to add. He meant, I'm sorry and thank you, and I will do my job better next time, and maybe don't make me choose between paper and people again. Danielle smiled with only one half of her mouth, the side that faced him. It was enough to let the man carry something home besides a story. Good night, she said. She turned toward the doors. The lane stayed open as if the marble itself had agreed to be polite. Phones rose a little higher. Arms pulled back just enough. Bodies learned the choreography power teaches gently when it doesn't have the time or patience to teach hard. On the mezzanine, the photographer took his last frame of the scene that would live longer than any toast given under this chandelier. A guard standing 2 inches taller than when he walked in, a server setting a glass where respect now sat. Light held its posture like a verdict pinned to the ceiling. It had found a new subject without changing its temperature. As Danielle crossed beneath it, the room stayed bright and honest, and for a moment no one spoke, because for once the light did all the explaining anyone needed. The chandelier held steady, a hard sun above good china. Light flattened the lies and sharpened the silver. Heat pooled at the base of columns where dust lived in filigree and pretended not to. Danielle felt the room adjusting around her, chairs inching, spines correcting, a tide deciding which shore to kiss. She let the phone drop to her side, glass cooling against palm. Across the marble, the guard's stance squared, as if a line had been chalked beneath his shoes, and he'd chosen the side with air. On what grounds? He asked, voice lowered, the sentence placed between her and the men like a traffic cone. The tall man filled the cone with noise. Fraud, trespass, whatever sticks. His breath smelled like elderflower, and certainty gone stale. Danielle turned her head an inch toward the torn pass halves in pearled fingers. They stick to you, she said. Her tone carried the temperature of a notary stamp, impersonal, permanent. Phones chimed first beat, second beat. A run of them notifications chewing the silence into neat pieces. She didn't check hers. The habit was older than the dress. Make the work. Trust the echo. Counsel confirm. Rebecca's voice came, clean and close. Escrow released. Portal lock kewid. Your call. Hold on the portal, Danielle said. Her eyes slid to the mezzanine where a lens waited with the patience of a clerk. Proof. Then procedure. The matriarch shifted a step, perfume bright as a blade. You'll apologize, she said, pearls catching a bead of light and refusing to let it go. The smile was a showroom smile polished. Empty. Tag for return. Danielle rested 2 fingers on the edge of a linen-draped highboy and felt wood under cloth. The steady truth beneath dressing. She counted a beat. Not tonight. A violinist let her bow hover, then set it gently on velvet silence, but not surrender. The quartet's lamp threw a small, obedient circle on sheet music. Ink lines glistened like rail tracks after rain. She watched a gnat swim blindly in the light and fail upward with pathetic grace. Look at her, the tall man said, angry smile, tightening into inventory. She doesn't even, sir, the guard said, and Waite sat down on the word. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't have to. Danielle inhaled once, slow, the citrus polish in the air, the steel note beneath it, the cool of stone climbing through thin soles into calves. A child memory flashed hotel lobbies at midnight, her mother's hand gentle at the elbow. The lesson that rooms pretend to be owned by those who speak loudest. Phase 3. Rebecca asked. The click of a pen cap somewhere far away. A nerve made audible. Stand by, Danielle said. Her gaze slid to the band, then the bar, then the door, mapping exits like a pilot checking sky. She stepped forward. A half-inch, enough to make the semicircle adjust. You ready to be embarrassed? The matriarch said. A pearl at the clasp had worked loose. Its wobble told the truth. The mouth wouldn't. Danielle lifted her chin a fraction. You already are. Midway through the room, somebody set a glass down too hard. Crystal chimed. Ah, soft alarm. All heads moved in that small, animal way, the herd registering thunder 2 counties over. Proceed, Danielle said then, not to the crowd, not to the man, to the line she carried like an artery. Send it. A pulse traveled through marble, phone to phone. On faces, blue break, then blanch, then the hard swallow of men who have mislaid the remote control to reality. A donor's smile unhooked. A florist's pin pricked a thumb. The quartet did not lift their bows. The tall man blinked loss, like a camera with dust in its hinge. You can't. We did, she said. The matriarch's fingers worried the pass-halves until they bent and stayed bent. Paper learning obedience it didn't deserve. She looked down at her hand, surprised to find evidence in it. Officer, she tried again, vowels scraped and thin. Remove. On what grounds? The guard repeated, and this time the repetition was a verdict. Danielle took the center like a person taking her seat on a train that was always hers, but had been occupied by strangers with forgettable faces. She let the silence run to the end of its breath. Then she spoke. You never asked my name, she said. The chandelier cooled a degree. Allison's camera slid a whisper to the left, to keep the mirrored column in frame. A server paused with a tray of seltzer, condensation cold against his wrist, eyes gone tender with the recognition of a sentence he'd want to tell later without adornment. I am Danielle Brooks, she said, and her mouth didn't need the microphone to explain itself. CEO, Brooks Global, architect of the deal, you toasted, 900 million redirected to Harlow. Gasps weren't in unison, but they agreed. Someone let out one clap loud. Wrong then found his shame. Another followed. Scattered applause, searching for agreement like Wi-Fi in an old house. You're bluffing, the tall man said. It was reflex, not strategy. The word a life raft. He'd never learned to inflate. Check your phone, she said. He did. And color left him the way lights go out at closing time row by row. No drama, no second chances. The matriarch looked to the screen and found the same handwriting there. Clean font, short line, no adjectives. A stillness followed. Not empty, a drawer opened in the room, and something heavy set inside. The quartet lowered their instruments onto their laps. Glasses stopped moving. The air system kept its indifferent hum, the heartbeat of a building that had seen men come and go without learning their names. You did this, the matriarch said, low and private, as if the microphone of the world weren't already on. She said it like accusation, like witchcraft, like the end of a prayer. No, Danielle said, I built it. There was no triumph in her tone, only the gravity of glass and law and labor. She felt the ache where cost lives, and didn't massage it away. Rebecca came back on the line. Press is live. Vendor notices at your word. City's council on standby for cross ties. Send, Danielle said. And loop municipal. We don't break anything that feeds schools and stops lights. Done. Rebecca said. The tall man closed his fist around air and came up with nothing. He tried a grin. It split. Enjoy your headlines, he said. A brittle flare of showmanship tossed into a damp room. This isn't a headline, Danielle said. It's a policy. The chandelier's light found the little imperfections the florist missed, the scratch on a silver base, a cigarette burn in carpet older than this ownership group would admit. It made no moral argument. It showed, "Ma'am," the guard said, softer now, closer to human. "I'm sorry, for he didn't finish." The sentence belonged to a different place, and perhaps a different man. Danielle inclined her head just enough to let him keep it. "Thank you for being careful," she said. Allison held the frame steady. In the mirror, pearls, torn pass, and Danielle's face aligned like a triptych hung by a patient hand. She felt the clip arrive in her bones before the drive light winked, the cut that would run clean in the morning, a record that didn't need a narrator. "Fix this," the matriarch hissed to the tall man without moving her mouth. He looked around for a lever. Any lever. Found only eyes. They were not levers. At the fountain of champagne, a bubble line rose against gravity, and burst, and rose again, and burst. The mechanical optimism of a machine built to perform regardless of context. Danielle watched it, held its lesson. Resistance is ritual, she thought, not sermon. Phase 3. Rebecca prompted. Back to the job the way a metronome returns to beat 3 after a cough. "We audit the network." "We do," Danielle said. "No victory laps." On the mezzanine, the photographer's shutter ticked like a polite clock. He widened for the last time. Left side thinning, right side thickening. The human geometry of reputations redrawn in public. Somewhere, a staff door side shut. The click echoed like punctuation. "We can make this right." The matriarch tried, pupils gone needle small. "Money does not like to learn new grammar." "Right would have been recognizing me before I had to introduce myself," Danielle said. "Right would have been treating a stranger as if she paid for the room even if she didn't." The pearl at the clasp finally surrendered, slipped, and hung by thread, a white planet choosing a lower orbit. Her hand flew to catch it. The gesture read like a confession. Allison's lens caught the bead. The mirrored column doubled it, then tripled it, until one loose pearl looked like a constellation remembering where to go. "You don't belong here," the tall man said. Last bullet spent as if it could still pierce anything. Danielle turned a shoulder toward the doors, the easiest motion she'd made all night. "I built here," she said, pre-climax breath, the room's long inhale, the chandelier's faint electric buzz, the hush that falls in courtrooms and kitchens right before the oven timer calls time. Danielle stood in it, feeling the day shift weight from one foot to the other. "Let's be done," she said to the line, to the guard, but to the architect who had put too many mirrors in this room, to herself. "Proceed." Rebecca's final confirm landed with the softness of good paper. "Executed. Logged. Countersigned. Municipal bridged. Press line holds." Danielle gave the tall man nothing to push against, gave the room no more words it could pretend to misunderstand. She stepped forward, and the seam widened, a path finding itself as if it had been scratched into the marble decades ago, waiting for someone to walk it without asking. The chandelier stayed constant above it all, light, even, and exact. It washed the pearls, the torn pass, the guard's careful hand, the waiter's damp cuff, Allison's steady little red dot. At the threshold, Danielle paused long enough to check the thing. She'd checked every time she left any room that mattered. No flicker. She let the light do its job and went on. The chandelier held like a hard sun, each bulb a small oath. No one had sworn aloud. Light made a map of faces, sudden topography of pride and blood. Heat gathered under collars, and along glass stems, a floral metallic mix of perfume and polish, turning the air into something expensive that didn't forgive. The first pair of hands clapped once too sharp, too early. Sound skittered across marble, embarrassed by its own ambition, then grew legs and found others. Applause, scattered, stopped, tried again. The room testing whether it remembered how to agree on anything besides dessert. The guard tugged his jacket straight by a half-inch. He had the posture of a man who'd walked through a door and discovered it opened in the other direction. "Ma'am," he said, lower, softer, not for the crowd, but for the record the crowd had become. You were careful," Danielle said. She didn't make him finish the sentence he couldn't carry. Her gaze moved past him, bar, band, doors, the narrow seam of space the room had made, and was pretending it meant to offer all along. Phones rose like a tide that didn't splash. Blue screens washed cheekbones cold, found the anxious gloss on lips, wrote headlines in reflections the way lightning writes on windows. Someone at the back said, "Oh," in a voice that didn't belong to money. Pearls tightened at the clasp. "Look at the chaos you've made," the woman said, smile lacquered, vowels polished. Her fingers were paper-cut red, where the torn pass had fought back a little. "Not caves," Danielle said. Correction. Her tone belonged to people who work after parties end and before cleaning starts inventory. Not opinion. Allison leaned her shoulder against the mirrored column and let the camera breathe with her. The lens framed Danielle's profile, as if the room had finally been designed for it. On the marble below, a ring of condensation, marked where a discarded flute had sweated out its courage. At the Harlow table, a server set down 2 fresh glasses that caught light and held it like a promise. No flourish. The man who reached for one lifted it an inch acknowledgement, not toast, and lowered it again before the alcohol remembered to sparkle. "We can fix this," the tall man said, as if the verb were a rope he'd always been allowed to pull. Sweat made a line at his temple, neat as a part in a childhood photo. "Morning call. Private room. We'll sort." "You had a room," Danielle said. Calm sat on the words like weight. "You made a choice." The quartet rested their bows at identical angles. Pages on the stands lay still but for the slow ripple of air conditioning, ink shining where the curve of a treble clef caught the chandelier. One violinist flexed her fingers against the neck and looked down as if the instrument had asked whether dignity had a key signature. "Phase." Rebecca's voice came through the hush, soft steel in Danielle's ear. "Vendor gate green. PR line staged. City council waiting on our cue. Hold PR." Danielle said, "Send the bridge. No outages for anyone who didn't tear paper." She let the consonants land clean, like placing plates where they belong. Across the aisle, a donor couple rose without ceremony. They left 2 place cards in tinted white, names turned blank side out, the kind of polite that reads as verdict. The woman touched her pearls, winced, and dropped her hand like a confession. "Officer," the matriarch said, the word sugared until it scratched. "Escort." "On what grounds?" the guard asked, the repetition now a metronome. He didn't look at Danielle. He looked at the halves in the matriarch's fist and at Allison's lens, and the math did itself. "Fraud." The tall man tried again, his voice pitched for intimacy, the confidence of a whisper used to winning. It flattened against the chandelier's even light and slid to the floor like a napkin that missed a lap. "Let it go," someone near him muttered, a suit jacket turned inside out by sudden conscience. Dry as kindling, the waiter drifted past with seltzer. "Hard to hold on," he said, "when you never had a grip." The corner of his mouth twitched, the night's only joke that didn't ask to be admired. Danielle angled an inch, so the seam in the crowd widened into a lane. She placed her palm on cool lacquer, the way a mason checks a plumb line through touch. "Rebecca," she said, quiet. "Loop Harlow. Vendor list first. Then messaging. No adjectives. Copy came back, professional and human in equal parts. Coalition draft waiting your sign. A photographer on the mezzanine took the wide shot that would live longer than any of them wanted. Left side thinning like a tide pulling out of a bad bay. Right side thickening. Gravity's new address. You think a speech makes you right. The matriarch said, the word right lost a shade, like paint under a window that never found curtains. She steadied her pearls with a thumb that had started to shake. I didn't give a speech, Danielle said. She slid her phone into the small clutch, like a blade she no longer needed. I did my job. A breath moved through the ballroom. Not a sigh, not relief, acceptance, the audible kind. Chairs settling, shoes finding honest balance. Light reached into the corners where dust pretended to be filigree and showed it for what it was. No serm. Just illumination. Allison checked time code and battery by touch. Her producer's texts stacked in gray bubbles. 2 lines. Don't chase. She filmed Danielle's hand as it left the lacquer, no tremor. A faint press line on skin that would fade by the lobby. The tall man's phone buzzed angry in his palm. 3 missed calls, then a name he couldn't not answer. Even if the room were on fire, he lifted it, listened, and went paler than policy. Help him. The matriarch told the PR lead without moving her mouth. The PR lead stared at a screen that reflected the chandelier more clearly than it showed rescue. I can't, she said, and the honesty arrived too late to be useful. Send. Rebecca's voice returned. Bridge confirmed. City thanks you without press. Coalition signatures at 8. Release at noon. Danielle said, let the morning eat its edits first. She turned her wrist. The light found the small bone under the skin and polished it. A server approached with a single flute. From the bar, he said, for he didn't finish, because he didn't have to. Send it to Harlow, Danielle said. Tell them congratulations. She didn't touch the glass. The bubbles rose anyway. Mechanical cheer indifferent to who drinks. The guard stepped back the last half step he owed to neutrality. He didn't salute. He didn't avert his eyes. He looked like a man who had seen a thing clearly and planned to remember it next Tuesday when no one was watching. Danielle, the tall man said, and the first name fell out of his mouth like a coin he hadn't meant to spin. You don't have to, this can be. You made it what it is, she said. No one here is confused. Pre-climax silence stretched thin as spun sugar, 1 degree from breaking and making a pretty mess. The chandelier hummed its small electrical hymn. Somewhere in the room, refrigeration kicked on. A low, honest whir that didn't ask permission to serve. Walk with me. Allison asked the question to space, to fate, to the space where quotes become angles. She didn't expect an answer. She framed the exit instead. Red dot steady. Honest as a pulse, Danielle turned. Motion ran along the seam like a zipper closing. No one stepped into her path, because the room had learned a new courtesy and wanted to perform it correctly. At the doors, she paused not for drama, for habit. Her gaze tipped upward, checking what she always checked, even when no one saw. No flicker. Good. Let's end this, the matriarch said, the bravado. An echo that didn't know the sound system was off. Her pearl string slipped another bead, and held by a thread that looked more like metaphor than jewelry. Already did, Danielle said, and stepped into the corridor air. Hotel carpet swallowed heel sound and replaced it with a hush made of fabric and money. A bell cart waited under a spray of lilies that had gone brown at the edges. Beauty kept past its hour. Elevator doors opened with a chime calm enough to be mistaken for mercy. Vehicles are staged, a staffer said, brisk and grateful to say anything that wasn't about headlines. Rear entrance, less traffic. Front is fine, Danielle said. The lobby's glass waited ahead. a sheet of city framed into a rectangle of permission. She walked without hurry. Haste, like apology, belonged to someone else. Behind her, applause tried one last time and found a rhythm that didn't embarrass itself. Not a standing ovation, a standing standard. Allison paced the distance to keep the shot honest. Her shoes squeaked once on polished stone and corrected. She caught the reflection of Danielle in the lobby mirror. The chandelier still ghosted above her like a crown that wouldn't sit, a bright geometry that belonged to the ceiling and to everyone under it. By the doors, the guard reached them again, out of breath from a route that wasn't long, just heavy. "Ma'am," he said, the syllable steady now. "Thank you for saying it where people could hear." Danielle held his gaze, the way a builder holds a blueprint up to a wall and sees they match. "Do it where people can't," she said. He nodded like a man who understood assignments. She pushed the glass with her palm. Street air broke against her first, warm from engines, salted with pretzel carts and damp concrete. Traffic muttered. Sirens considered a rehearsal and decided against it. Inside, the chandelier kept doing what it had done all night, lighting equally, judging nothing. From the sidewalk, it looked smaller, a domestic star, a thing humans made to make themselves less blind. Her reflection ghosted in the door, aligned with its glow, the briefest false crown, and slid away when the door side shut. Outside, a black car idled without impatience. Rebecca's name lit on the phone and went dark. No need. Decisions already done. Allison lowered her camera and let silence be the quote that closed. Danielle took the first step toward the curb. Light from inside pooled on the threshold, like a promise that didn't depend on witnesses. Her heel cut through it, then out of it, and the brightness stayed behind, steady as a standard. Someone had hammered into the ceiling long before this night, and finally meant streetlight pooled on wet asphalt like a low tide of gold. Engines idled, breath of heat and gasoline mixing with pretzel salt. The hotel's glass door held the chandelier as a small captive star, a bright coin pinned against night. Danielle slid into the back seat without looking back. Leather gave a soft sigh. The scent was clean and a little chemical. Rebecca's voice came a beat later in her ear, tight with calm. "City Bridge is ready. If we flip vendors tonight, no school lunches or traffic signals hiccup." "Flip," Danielle said. The driver pulled away, tires whispering over paint. Outside, faces bent over phones in a lit procession, the slow bending of a neighborhood toward a sentence it hadn't expected to read. Allison posted a still. Rebecca added, "Pearls, torn pass." Reflection. It doesn't need caption. A click of keys at her end. Quiet as sleet. Traffic held its breath at a red that felt longer than usual. The light inside the car threw a gentle white on Danielle's wrist, on the seam of her dress, on the neat line of her knuckles. She stared at her palm and saw the faint impression left by lacquer wood remembered with skin. "Harlow's waiting," Rebecca said. "Jonathan can be at the office in 20 or 10. If you want him to break laws, he sponsors." 20. Danielle said, "And tell him we won't admire speed, we'll admire accuracy." She leaned her head back and felt the shape of the headrest press back. An honest exchange. A siren wound up 2 blocks over, and then changed its mind. Steam rose from a manhole with a clean white. It didn't smell like anything you'd want to keep. Along the curb, a florist tugged a wagon of limp lilies into shadow. Petals browned at the tips, like advice heard too late. At the next light, a bus moaned and settled. A kid on the corner spun in place, arms open, catching drizzle in his mouth. The glow from the hotel chandelier reached the sidewalk in a thin ribbon and stopped at a crack in the concrete. as if the city had drawn a line under the evening and signed it, "Legals on." Rebecca said, "Escrow release, confirmed. We're fine unless a judge wakes up cranky enough to pretend optics outrank contracts." Papers slid under her hands somewhere across town. The sound was a soft weather. "Cranky judges are allergic to adjectives," Danielle said. "Give them none." A bar's door flung open and spilled out a hot song and three men with ties unmade. Their laughter had no heat. It fell apart at the curb and turned into breath. Danielle watched their reflections unspool across the car window, like a strip of film that had already been developed. In the office lobby, the guard nodded at her with a new angle to his spine. The air smelled like faint citrus and the stubborn ghost of carpet shampoo. A chandelier here too, but rode with smaller bulbs, exact and less forgiving. Each a decimal point in a sum. Elevator up. The car hummed, blue LED digits climbing a tidy ladder. She watched the numbers and thought about stairs, the different burn. At 12, the doors parted on cool glass and warmer wood. "Caffeine?" a night assistant asked. "Already moving." "Whatever tastes like a decision," Rebecca said from the far end. Stepping out of a conference room with a tablet and a pen, she liked to click, though she never clicked it in front of strangers. The war room had the kindness of clean lines. Glass walls turned the city into a low, luminous aquarium. Desks held nothing but what was needed. 2 screens, a stack of contracts, a coaster shaped like a square of sidewalk. "Jonathan in 10, Rebecca said. "Compliance is excited, which is unhelpful, but they know not to look it." She angled the tablet so Danielle could see vendor map glowing in traffic colors. Red where it hurt, orange where it might, green where their hands already were. "City first," Danielle said. She traced a line from a municipal service they'd inherited in a prior life to a vendor they would not be calling again. "We don't turn off the light to make a point about light." "Already mirrored," Rebecca said. "Our IT team has the replacement keys in a kettle drum. Waiting for your tap." She thumbed a slider. Orange bled into green with the satisfaction of a bruise healing. "PR?" Danielle asked. "Draft sleeps until noon," Rebecca said. "Let the doctored clip run out of oxygen. Allison's 4 angles are doing the suffocating." A text from her producer blinked and hid. She ignored it with professional neglect. Jonathan arrived in a navy that managed to be new without shouting. He shook hands like a man signing consent. "Timing," he said, not as joke, more like a temperature. "Imperative," Danielle answered. She pointed to the board, to the red threaded through their shared supply chain. "Sever clean. We do not punish. We prevent." "Procedural?" he asked. "Boring," Rebecca said, "which is how you know it will survive Monday." She pushed a stack of pre-cleared notices across Walnut. "Have you ever thought about running for?" Jonathan began. "No," Danielle said. "I can't afford applause." He laughed once, quietly, and signed where flags told him to. Phones in a row face down. A rule Danielle never spoke, but everyone kept. A low hum from vents kept servers honest in the next room over. The city outside moved to its midnight shift, garbage trucks heavy as decisions, bicycles whispering past the glass with small, hot, determined lights. "Any blowback that's not noise?" Jonathan asked. "Soft capital might get soft," Rebecca said. "Aaron texted me a sentence that thinks it's a paragraph. Concern about optics. Our trustees prefer distance when heat rises." End of. She deleted the name after speaking it. A small superstition she didn't share. "He can have distance," Danielle said. "Send him a note that makes that sound like an option we respect, not a throne we notice." She drew a breath that had shape and let it leave the way good steam does, quiet, visible, brief. They ran replaceables, column by column. No adjectives, only lines through names, arrows to new addresses, initials to signify mutual consent. On the board, green islands grew. The red retreated into corners, where it could sulk without hurting anyone's lunch. "Ip," Jonathan said. His thumb hovered at the edge of the table because expensive men touch wood when they're about to mention patents. "Where it fits our portfolio, we buy," Rebecca said. "Where it doesn't, we hold time against them with filings that won't embarrass a judge." She didn't grin, but the sentence almost let her press. He tried again. "Values," Danielle said. "Short, no deeply, no committed to. We say what we do, not what we feel like if someone asked us on a podcast." The clock on the wall made a good sound for that kind of sentence. The steady, boring tick of a machine proud to be small. A junior slid in a tray of coffee and glasses of water with mint leaves. The room smelled suddenly green. He adjusted one coaster by 2 millimeters until the square sat true. "Sorry," he said, blushing, honest about his compulsion. "Never apologize to a line," Danielle said. He smiled like he'd been allowed to keep a surprising part of himself. At the window, rain began with the smallest tact. 3 taps, then a thread. The city took it without flinch. Light smeared a little. Reflections layered, conference table on skyline on her own shoulder. A palimpsest of work. Security training. Rebecca said, scanning a note. The guard from the hotel emailed the generic inbox. He asked if we had materials he could use. "We do now," Danielle said. "Send him a packet. Keep it simple. Hands visible. Ask names. Check the room. Then the pass." She touched the edge of the contract stack, as if paper could hear instructions better than air. Compliance checked in with a head poked around glass. "We're good," they said, eager in the way people get when their job can finally be a noun. Danielle nodded once, and they vanished, pleased to have earned silence. "Anything else before you accuse us of winning cleanly?" Jonathan asked, a grin lifting one side. "A small mercy to the hour. They'll call it vindictive," Rebecca said. "They always do when consequence shows up dressed as policy." She drank coffee like it was medicine and set the cup down dead center on the coaster. "Then we don't answer adjectives," Danielle said. She looked at the city, at the hundreds of windows, acting like a galaxy. Someone had arranged for office chairs and fortunes. Tomorrow is paperwork, pre-climax breath, the brief quiet that you get when good work has moved exactly to the edge of what it can do in one sitting. Vent hum, distant truck cough, coffee cooling. Danielle let the room be a room and not a stage. Her phone buzzed with a number she recognized only by how people like Aaron structured their sentences. She ignored it. Rebecca caught the hint and typed a reply that sounded like a door left unlocked without fear. "Release at noon," Danielle said again, not to be heard, to put the time in the room's body. No names, no favorite verbs, no performance. "We'll let the light do the teaching." Jonathan stood, weight settled. Signature fresh enough to smear if he were impatient. He wasn't. "At breakfast tomorrow," he said. "Somebody will say you made it look easy." "I'll be too busy to correct them," Danielle said. He left with his coat folded over his arm. Rain mapping, polite circles on the sleeves. Rebecca watched him go, and then sat, shoulders dropping for the first time since the ballroom. "Allison wants an off-camera line if we have one." "Give her the only one we have," Danielle said. That one day, the lights were on, and we acted like it. They sat with that. Night leaned a little harder against the glass and didn't get in. Across the avenue, another chandelier smaller, Fushier flickered once and corrected, as if embarrassed to be seen doing anything but its job. Home? Rebecca asked. In a minute, Danielle said. She picked up a pen and wrote 6 sentences on a single sheet, block letters neat as scaffolding. She circled the second. We do not partner with humiliation. She set the pen down, pressed the paper with her palm as if to teach it the shape of a hand. The imprint would fade. The work wouldn't. Light stayed on. Rain stitched the windows with straight lines. The city kept its quiet hum, an audit disguised as weather, steady, unafraid of being looked at. Morning pressed a thinner light against the glass, blue-gray and exact as a ledger. The office smelled like fresh paper and the citrus of an overworked cleaning crew. On Danielle's desk, the small brass lamp threw a neat circle, the kind that doesn't care if anyone's watching. Rebecca slid in sideways, tablet under her arm, hair caught back with something that wasn't trying to be pretty. Soft capital is getting cold, she said. Aaron wants 90 days his trustees like their heat at a distance. Danielle leaned her hip against the desk and read the one-line email twice. The sentence thought it was a policy. Send him language he can carry without feeling brave. Doors open. Standards aren't. Already drafted. Rebecca said, and legal says Whitmore hired Mallory and Penn. Judge shopping. Tro. Risk low. Noise high. How low? Danielle's jaw eased a notch when the number came back under 5. Silence settled. Not empty like a room that remembers what it was built for. The lamp hummed a small electric hymn. Danielle adjusted its head with 2 fingers until the beam lay even across 6 lines she'd written the night before. She circled one. We don't turn off the light to prove we have one. On the wall, the vendor map pulsed in a slow, confident heartbeat. Green blooming where orange had been. Red shrinking to manageable corners. Jonathan's check marks formed a straight seam. That was his gift. Precise lines in bad weather. Councilman rages, she asked. Rebecca touched her ear. On at 9, she said. Wants assurances. No traffic signal blinks at noon because we grew a conscience. It won't, Danielle said. She turned the lamp off, waited a beat, turned it on again. The circle returned. Unruffled. Across town, servers woke under mezzanine vinyl and mixed cables. Allison's hands learned their morning again coffee. Scrub. Roll the kinks from wrists. Gone tight from holding truth steady. Her editor wanted something that would eat the doctored clip before the algorithm did. She gave him 4 angles and a caption without adjectives. Utnina. Rhea's voice came through without throat clearing. Appreciate the bridge, he said. The city likes electricity when it stays in the wires. No press, Danielle said. He laughed once. Only when the lights go out, he said, and gave her the time she needed without asking what that cost. Mallory and Penn filed a courtesy notice. Legal reported from the rectangle on the wall. Their courtesy is mostly a scowl. They'll pretend you tortiously interfered with their feelings. Danielle sat and let the chair remember her weight. File declaratory, she said. Values clause first line. We didn't name a person. We named behavior. Judges like noons. Rebecca's tablet buzzed. She read it, thumb hovering, eyes doing the math of not a disaster, just a price. North Atlantic went public, she said. They love our standards from afar. They're stepping aside for now into a... Danielle nodded like someone who knew what a quartet costs when 4 people have to eat. Send a note, she said. Not punish, not plead. Make it easy to come back with their dignity intact and their adjectives forgotten. Down the hall, a copier rattled, paused, and remembered its job. A junior slid a door open with both hands. Glass whispered against steel. He set a tray with coffee and 2 glasses of water on the table and arranged the coasters until they lined up with a tidy, unspoken north. "Is it too much?" he asked, staring at the perfection he'd made and suspected was ridiculous. "Never apologize to a line," Danielle said. A shy, involuntary grin crossed his face like a sudden shaft of sun through cloud. He retreated with the good posture of someone who'd been allowed to keep the way his brain liked order. The first wave of edits arrived on Danielle's screen like flies around anything sweet. A cut that removed the slur, a loop that made the tear look clumsy, a caption that turned policy into temper, and hoped no one checked. "Don't engage," Rebecca said, reading the same river. "Starve them." Allison uploaded the 4-angle package, each clip a pane of glass, mezzanine wide, floor left, floor right, the mirrored column that made the room tell on itself. She synced the violin's hiccup to the tear, placed the guard's hesitation against the pass halves, included the HVAC's low hum to underline the way silence holds a story straight. The caption, full context. That was all. "Sent," Rebecca said, as if she'd exhaled something she'd been holding since midnight. Let the morning go about its business. Phones pinged around the city, as if the same bird had discovered all the windows at once. Inside a salon in the South Side, 3 women stopped mid-foil to watch a screen. A little girl learned a new word, audit. On a train, a lawyer with last night's tie in his pocket breathed through his nose and texted his wife, "You were right," which would cost him nothing and everything. Mallory and Penn's motion drafts cite intent, legal said, as if you meant to make them look bad. "I didn't," Danielle said. "I meant to make us look clean." She rotated the lamp a degree. The circle accepted the correction. Rebecca walked to the glass and looked out at a sky, the color of a file left open too long on a desktop. "Press conference at 11, she said, reading a PR email from a number that liked its own name. "They think they have new footage." "I know that. They have a tech and a laptop on a folding table," Danielle said. "They brought a knife to a courtroom." She stood and crossed to the vendor map, as if it were a window to a field she used to walk as a child. "Ip?" she asked, one finger tracing a thin line to the edge of their portfolio. "Filed holds where it makes sense," Rebecca said. "No fishing expeditions. Judges are cranky before lunch." "Good," Danielle said. "Boredom is our flavor of justice." The quiet beat arrived without warning and did its work. Vents hummed. A bus sighed 12 stories below. Somewhere in the building a fluorescent flickered once and corrected itself, embarrassed by the attention of better light. "Any word from the hotel?" Danielle asked, still watching the city like a technician watches a clean heartbeat on a monitor. The GM authenticated the footage. Rebecca said, "He said training review." He didn't sound sorry, which is better than the performance of sorrow. "Send them our packet," Danielle said. "Hands visible. Ask names. Check the room. Then the pass. And Allison wants a sentence off camera," Rebecca said, eyes still on her tablet. "She says the cut will live clearer if it has one clean bone in it." "Give her the only one we have," Danielle said. "That one day, the lights were on, and we acted like it." At 10:30, legal surfaced another note. Whitmore's counsel threatening a temporary restraining order with adjectives. Rebecca drafted a reply comprised entirely of noun. The courier collected it with 2 signatures and a look that said he'd been carrying silly things all morning and appreciated the weight of a serious one. "Anything from Aaron?" Danielle asked. He wrote, "We need to think about reputation," Rebecca said. She deleted the name and read the line as if it were from somebody else. She answered with 3 sentences about the difference between reputation and standards, and how one feeds the other when nobody's clapping. Jonathan called from a car, rain painting patience across his windshield. Vendors holding, he said. The ones who flinched, flinched politely. Polite failure travels quiet. Danielle said, thank them for saving everyone time. At 11 sharp, the press room tried to be a room, then chose to be a hallway with a banner. They rolled out a doctored edit that had the energy of a teenager claiming the dog ate his math. By 11, Ling Luke, Allison's package had doubled it in reach, then pressed it into paste. They're going to eat their own sometime after coffee, Rebecca said, watching as counsel's jaw tightened into a resignation. Self-destruction has a favorite hour. We don't have to watch, Danielle said. Get the municipal sign-offs. Quiet. No ribbon. Allison texted a photo of the lobby at the hotel. The chandelier's light caught on 100 phones like a map of quiet planets. Beneath it, a new sign. All guests will be treated with respect. The font was honest. The tape holding it was not. Pearls are trending, Rebecca said, scrolling. Someone framed the slip in the clasp like a poem. Let them, Danielle said. Everybody likes a metaphor when they're pretending they don't. Pre-climax breath again. It lived at the top of the hour, in the pause between outgoing and incoming. The lamp's circle didn't tremble, neither did her hand. Judge assigned for Monday. Legal said. He reads, he won't enjoy theater. He'll like our nouns. Danielle said. Send him everything that lets him nap after lunch. The rain eased and left the city with a washed face. Across the avenue, a smaller lobby chandelier flickered once in apology, and then steadied, as if remembering its purpose. In Danielle's office, the brass lamp kept its circle, the size of a dinner plate, precise as a promise. Press wants to profile you, Rebecca said without looking up. The kind of piece that installs halo and regrets it in 6 months. No, Danielle said. Profile the work. It doesn't take pictures well. That's how you know it's real. She lifted the memo and slid it under the lamp until the circle pinned down the line she meant to live by while people forgot they'd read it. We do not partner with humiliation. The ink didn't glow. It didn't need to. Rebecca closed her tablet with a soft click. Lunch, she asked. I can get something that tastes like cardboard and virtue. Later, Danielle said. She took a breath and felt the small ache in the place cost lives. It asked for attention. She gave it recognition and moved on. Outside the conference room, someone laughed the clean laugh of a solved problem. A printer finished a run and beeped as if proud of itself. In the corridor, a janitor dragged a yellow bucket past the glass and nodded in without stopping. Danielle switched off the lamp. Morning light carried the room now, bright and indifferent, washing everything equally. She let it. Then she turned the lamp back on and watched the circle return, steady as a standard that didn't come with applause. The lights were wrong, hot, humming, too close to skin for anyone to pretend clarity came cheap. Fluorescence bled against rented backdrops, while dust hung in their beams like a slow confession that couldn't find its words. Reporters filled the metal chairs in uneven rows. Cables crawled along the carpet in loops a foot, could trip on if the truth needed help. Somebody's coffee steamed thin and bitter by the wall. The smell of midnight burned twice. They filed in as a unit navy suit, lacquered hair, a counselor with a jaw like a memo. The matriarch's pearls sat high, clasped tight enough to sing if you listened. The tall man wore posture the way some men wear cologne, heavy and designed to arrive before he did. Mourn the PR lead began, voice pitched to domesticate a room that hated being tamed. She smiled at the center camera, counting beats with her teeth. Behind her, the banner with their name fought wrinkles and lost, each crease a small rumor. We were targeted by a malicious stunt, the tall man said. His hand found the podium edge and gripped it like a rail on a moving train. He nodded toward the apron of microphones, invited them to lean closer to a story he planned to sand smooth. The AV tech cued the clip. Air in the room tightened until it sounded like someone had sealed a jar. The edit rolled no slur, no tear, just a shaky pass and an eager guard. The night remixed to fit a version of events that preferred its own reflection. Authentic, time-stamped by our team, the PR lead said. She emphasized team with a small shake of her head, as if the word could do more push-ups than it could. She turned her tablet face in like a shield. Front row. Allison leaned back 1 inch. Her camera bag slept by her ankles, zipper tab touching the floor, small metal note in a room of hot plastic. She watched the way the fluorescent light sat on everyone's faces and decided it made liars look glazed. "Why is there no ambient audio?" a reporter near the aisle asked. Her hair was pulled tight, like a plan that didn't tolerate flaws. She glanced at her phone without moving her head. "Consent," the tall man said. He tasted the word while saying it, and didn't like the flavor. "Our legal team advised Hotel GM authenticated venue sound this morning," the reporter said, reading from a text. On record, a dozen thumbs woke screens at once. Blue squares chopping light into a different geometry. Counsel's jaw twitched 0.5 millimeter, the body's way of acknowledging defeat without submitting. "We're confident in the integrity," he tried. The microphone turned his confidence into a dry hiss. Second row. A stringer with a busted knuckle raised his hand, lazy as a heat wave. "4-angle package is live," he said. "Your shot's 2 seconds shorter than the mezzanines." Out of context, the PR lead said. "The old hymn, the old kneeler." She moved her weight from one heel to the other, like a metronome that had lost count. "Half-truths are almost as dangerous as all the slur," someone murmured. "Not loud, not needed." The matriarch lifted her chin and found the room wasn't the ballroom. It refused to look impressed. She touched her pearls, as if they were a switch. "We have served this city for a century," she said. "My family has put its name on." She stopped. The microphone had caught her breath, chewing on a word she couldn't spit out with witnesses. Allison's phone buzzed once her editor. "Now," she typed back with her thumb. "Eyes on the room. Posted. Let it eat." The tall man gestured to the AV tech, who gestured back with a shrug already halfway to a flinch. The replay looked worse the second time. The seam where truth had been cut out flashing like a stitch that won't hold. A bead of sweat broke from the tall man's hairline, slid along his temple, and went missing under his ear. "Counsel," a reporter with a voice made for public radio, asked, "Are you prepared to vouch for the footage?" He didn't blink when he said vouch. The word landing, soft and heavier than it sounded. Counsel closed his eyes, opened them, reached for a set of papers that had always been a parachute. His hand found nothing. He looked at the matriarch, then at the tall man, and chose his oxygen. "Our firm withdraws," he said. Dry, final, the sound of a gavel made of paper. Effective immediately. Silence stretched between fluorescent hums. It didn't feel like mercy. It felt like gravity finding its favorite subject. A camera lens clicked somewhere near the door. An insect of truth feeding politely. "Cowardice," the matriarch said, barely a breath. Vowels burn. Her thumb worried the pearl clasp. The string held, then didn't. Beads scattered. Bright weather across industrial carpet. One pearl rolled. Lazy, intent, found the seam of Allison's boot and rested. She let it sit against leather like a small moon catching tide. She didn't pick it up. The PR lead blinked, recalibrated, squared her shoulders. "We will be pursuing all legal remedies," she said. It sounded like a sentence from a brochure. From the rear, a local anchor read her own crawl. voice polite and lethal. Directors resigning. She said, 3 so far. I have the statement. The tall man reached for the mic and met dead weight. The AV tech had killed it out of instinct, survival choosing itself. His mouth moved anyway. A silent sermon about betrayal, about entitlement, about a room that used to obey the right shoes. Another hand went up. Do you regret tearing the pass? Allison didn't stand. She didn't need to. The question moved down the rows like weather. We don't, the matriarch started. She stalled, found no elegant path around the thing she'd already said once in a different room. Her lips formed the first letter of a word her PR team would have sold their cars to take back. Like what? Allison asked. Even, almost kind. It slid a hook into the quiet and hauled up something large. The PR lead's smile cracked. We're done here, she said. But cameras weren't done. And neither was the light. Every one of them felt the pre-climax breath, that thin silence that arrives right before a body understands it has been seen. Heat from the lamps pressed low on scalps. Somewhere, a vent chattered, coughed, then settled. Embarrassed to be heard, counsel folded his hands and made the slow walk down the side aisle. Head high, pace steady, resignation as posture. The matriarch's hand trembled at her throat like she had swallowed a bee. The tall man's gaze landed on Allison's boots, as if he'd found the author of Gravity. We will not be bullied by he tried. He stopped. The sentence looked strange in his mouth, the way prayer looks on a man who only does it in airports. A woman in the back, publicist, probably held a phone to her ear and said, "Salvage," 3 times like a spell. No one materialized. The plaster smelled warm, cut his feed. Someone whispered behind the cameras. Clicks. Switches. A low-tech murmur. The soundboard's tiny kingdom choosing an exile. The reporter with the public radio voice leaned forward and looked at the matriarch as if she were a witness, not a donor. Allison never moved her boot from the pearl. She sent a text to Rebecca. It's happening. Rebecca's reply came quick. Economical. We're busy, but thanks for the view. The AV tech sank into his folding chair like a man who had learned a law of physics the hard way. He rubbed a thumb across the spacebar as if it were a worry stone. Later, he would tell someone at a bar he had turned off a mic at the perfect second. Any further questions? The PR lead asked, brittle and bright. Hands went up like wheat in a gust. She pointed to none of them. The room vacuumed its own sound and left the fluorescence humming. The banner behind the podium drooped in the middle, fabric surrendering to gravity and bad tape. The matriarch stepped back from the podium as if the floor had shifted beneath her heels. Allison stood, finally, and let the pearl roll on ahead of her. It wandered a perfect gentle arc, then came to stop against a cable that carried power to the house lights. She imagined a diagram. Causes. Effect. Small white bead. Thick black cord, the night's whole argument in miniature. Outside, the day had brightened into a hard noon that took no side. A janitor pushed a yellow bucket past the open door. Wheels squeaking, mop head dripping with a slow beat. He didn't look in. He didn't have to. The PR lead closed the book she didn't need. We'll be issuing a statement, she said. It was already on 10 feeds, words failing to earn their size. Reporters lifted bags, checked batteries, swapped looks that meant copy. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed once. Dry. The little dark humor that rooms allow when empires misplace their passwords. Allison waited for the row to clear. She bent, picked up the pearl, and set it on the table where a mic had died. She didn't say anything, but the gesture read, a small, even kind of mercy. She stepped into the narrow hallway where cinderblock met old paint. The air temperature dropped. A mercy after lamps. Her phone buzzed editor again. Hungry, ready to cut, then eat. then cut again. She typed a line, plain as cement. Council withdraws. Directors resign. Edit debunked. She hit send and felt the odd calm that comes after the obvious happens in public. In the elevator, a security guard stared at the floor numbers with the reverence of a churchgoer watching a candle. He glanced at Allison's camera bag, then at her, and nodded once human to human, off the record. She nodded back, shared language with a man whose job was to keep rooms from doing exactly what rooms love to do. On street level, heat lifted off the pavement. The city's sound came back in layers: bus brakes, a bicycle bell, a dog's nails clicking across stone. Above it, sunlight hit a lobby chandelier across the street and made it glow like it remembered last night's job. Allison raised her phone and snapped a frame, reflections ricocheting off 100 screens in the glass, light mapping itself. She tucked the phone away without looking. Some frames you save for yourself. Back upstairs. They announced the conference over. Reporters kept typing. The room's hum dimmed but didn't die. The fluorescents kept working because nobody had told them not to. The matriarch turned her face to the banner to fix nothing. Her hands moved in tiny circles over the fabric, smoothing and smoothing, a motion that used to end with control. The tall man stood with his back to the podium. Shoulders slumped the way a man slumps when he's suddenly aware of the weight the suit had been carrying for him. He stared at the dead microphone, at the small lamp on the tech table that threw an honest circle. It lit the scratches and the tape residue and the dust ring where a cup had been. Precise, unjudging, without appetite for story. He looked away first. Outside, noon kept being noon. Inside, light kept being light. The hum from the bulbs was a kind of audit boring, thorough, undefeated by adjectives. Allison walked toward the stairs and took them two at a time, thighs burning in the good, real way. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The story had learned how to tell itself, and the lights still hot, still humming did what they were made to do. Afternoon tilted toward gold and glass. Heat slept on the windows, a thin layer you could almost wipe away. In the office, the brass desk lamp kept its circle the way a lighthouse keeps its pulse indifferent to weather, stubborn about duty, calibrated to a coast. Only it could read. Rebecca came in without knocking. Her hair had done its day and stopped negotiating. She set a slim folder on the table like a clean blade and slid a finger beneath the clasp, as if she were about to peel a label off a new thing and didn't want to nick the surface. It was meant to protect. Coalition draft, she said. 10 signatures. 3 pending. 2 pretending. Noon release holds, unless you want to move. Her tone made Noon feel like a floor, not a dare. Hold, Danielle said. She watched the lamp circle ride up the paper until it pinned the lead line and sat there as if it had always lived on that sentence. The ink looked honest under the light. No gloss, no bravado. Just the exact black of words that meant to survive the week. A floor below. HVAC gave a patient cough, then remembered its part in the score. Coffee lived in the carpet like a rumor with good manners. Beyond the glass, the city flashed a polite grin of windshields and clean shirts. People still playing Noon as if Noon hadn't just been fired from a job it took for granted. Jonathan arrived with his jacket folded instead of worn. Vendors are mostly green, he said. He tapped the screen where a few orange threads crossed the map like stubborn vines, then traced a neat path for cutting them without making a mess that would embarrass anyone we didn't have to. Municipal stays boring. Your favorite adjective. Not an adjective, she said. A standard. She turned the lamp a degree. The beam obeyed with the soft confidence of a tool correctly used. Her cell buzzed once, insistent and private. She ignored it. Rebecca didn't, because her job was to be rude on Danielle's behalf when manners would cost more than dignity. "Aaron again," she said, thumb flicking. "He wants assurances. We won't ask questions about his bored spine. Assure him of our amnesia," Danielle said, "and our standards." A junior slid in with a stack of vendor acknowledgments. Edges aligned, faces blanched with a day's worth of copy machine fluorescence. He placed them square, adjusted the corner a breath, and waited for someone to tell him he was ridiculous. No one did. "Thank you," Danielle said. The kid smiled like order had been promoted to virtue. On the TV, nobody had turned up. The crawl kept crawling. Silent mouths moved under graphics that liked their own color palette. Danielle didn't watch. She watched Rebecca watch. Because sometimes the most efficient readout of chaos is the face of the person who filters it for a living. They're trying overreach. Rebecca reported. +2 think pieces on civility. One from a man who calls women dear in emails, and another from a woman who apologized to a door she bumped into last week. She let the sarcasm hang, and then folded it until it was small enough to fit in her pocket. "Any consequence with teeth?" Jonathan asked. He didn't sound hopeful. He sounded like a man checking the weather app out of habit. "Judge Monday," Rebecca said. "He reads. He naps. He dislikes adjectives. Whitmore's filing is mostly smoke, drawn in the shape of an argument." She turned a page and put her finger on a clause that had grown into courage overnight. The lamp hummed. They all felt it quiet work pretending to be furniture. Danielle placed a palm flat on the coalition draft and thought of the pass tearing and the pearl loosening, and the way a room learns which object to worship when the people in it forget how to stand up straight. City Hall confirmed all bridges, Rebecca said. Reyes sent a thank you like a receipt. 2 lines. No exclamation mark. No adjectives. "Good," Danielle said. "Let's keep giving him reasons to be boring." Allison's text lit the corner of the screen like a swallow clipping the surface of a lake. Quick and precise. Council walk. Directors cracking. Clip holding. 3 dots. Then one more line. "People are sending me the line about lights." Danielle typed back without ceremony. "It's theirs now." She put the phone face down and let the lamp turn it into a dark square on walnut. Jonathan sketched a box around the last orange thread with his finger. "IP corner," he said. "2 filings we should acquire on merit. 3 we should hold in the name of sobriety." "Take the 2, Danielle said. "Put the 3 in a drawer labeled, 'We aren't petty, we're patient.'" She wore the smallest smile, the kind you might miss if you weren't calibrated to care about microclimates. Silence arrived, not as emptiness, but as room, vent hum, pencil tick, far traffic making long, low chords. The lamp pooled its circle on the coalition line until the words looked like they could walk into court and sit up straight without anyone holding their hand. "PR wants quotes," Rebecca said. "The sort reporters can drape over a photo like tinsel, so it looks like meaning. Give them actions," Danielle said. "And a timestamp." Jonathan leaned an elbow on the back of a chair, which was as relaxed as he got in buildings he didn't own. "You will be loved for a minute," he said. He said it without envy and without delusion. "I'll survive it," she said. The driver's number flashed. "Car in 10, Rebecca said. "Meeting with the municipal IT folks before they do the quiet stuff that keeps elevators from sulking. They weren't consulted." She gathered the folder, then paused. "What?" Danielle said. She already knew the answer, lived in the angle of Rebecca's hand on the clasp. Envelope showed up, Rebecca said. The seal on it had the old family name embossed, heavy as if weight could do work. "Certified. Urgent. End of." Danielle lifted it with 2 fingers like a delicate, dead thing. She could read a letter without opening it. This one was easy. Regret dressed as diplomacy, the romantic comedy version of contrition, a request to be forgiven for the cost of other people. She set it under the lamp, as if to test whether light would bleach ink. For a moment no one spoke. The circle laid itself over the seal and made it ordinary. Metal warmed under her knuckle. Paper warmed under ink. The city threw its own indifferent glow in from behind. "Shredder," Rebecca asked. "In a minute," Danielle said. She didn't need to look out the window to see the jewelry advertisement beside the next building, a ring big enough to lie with confidence about what it meant. She didn't need to read the letter to know it was asking her to be the kind of person a chandelier exists to flatter. "Packets to the hotel," Jonathan asked, cutting through the hole the envelope had made. "Security training, signage, the stuff that sounds like etiquette, but saves people from being harmed by it. Already in draft," Rebecca said. "Hands visible, ask names, check the room, then the pass." She repeated it like a catechism built to replace a worse one. The lamp hummed again. Or maybe that was the habit of listening finally inventing a sound to suit itself. Danielle slid the envelope off the desk and took the 2 steps to the shredder in the corner. Her heels made a clean tick. The machine made a low, pleased purr. Paper became ribbon without discussion. Rebecca watched, then looked away because dignity sometimes means not making a ceremony of another person's relief. Jonathan didn't look at all. He studied the vendor map, eyes, locating green the way thirsty men memorize a river. "Will be asked for a statement at 5, Rebecca said. "TV wants light and your face." She folded the word light so it didn't pretend to be a compliment. "Give them a building," Danielle said. "Traffic flows, lunch lists. Anything that looks like work did its job without applause." Her voice was calm in the way bridges are calm until someone forgets what weight means. The sun slid a degree and turned the glass hot to the touch. Someone down the hall dropped a stapler and swore the non-televised kind of swear. On the street, a bicycle bell stitched 3 bright notes into the low drone. "Coalition goes at noon," Rebecca said, checking the clock. She refused to anthropomorphize. No adjectives, first line values, second line actions, third line phone number for reporters who forgot they could read. "Send," Danielle said. She watched the lamp hold its circle steady, and for a heartbeat, she saw another circle, the chandelier, that room, the way light had picked neutrality and made it look like judgment, because people didn't know what to do with fairness when it wasn't flattering them. Allison's name flashed again. "Off the record, how do you want this remembered?" Danielle typed back with her thumb without looking for help. "As work, 3 dots. And for the girls," she let the lamp find the line on the page, then answered, "That one day, the lights were on, and we acted like it." "Municipal," Rebecca said, already on her feet. "We'll be on the 10th floor with the men who know which switch controls the things you never see. Tell them I respect their boredom," Danielle said. She stood, slid the coalition draft into her bag, and put her hand on the lamp's neck the way you steady a dog at a curb. The metal was warm. Jonathan lingered. "You understand," he said. "When we tell this at dinner, it will sound cleaner than it felt." "Good," she said. "Dinner has enough texture." They left the office with the lamp still on. The circle lay on the wood, as if a person were sitting there, saying nothing, refusing to perform sleep. In the corridor, a janitor wheeled his yellow bucket past and nodded without asking what this floor had done to be so awake. Elevator down. The cables sang their quiet, oily hymn. A man in overalls rode with them, badge clipped to a pocket full of screws and warranties. He looked at Danielle's shoes, then her eyes, and said, We'll fix the bulbs where they flicker. They flicker, she asked. Always somewhere, he said. It's a big building. He smiled like the person in charge of gravity for a small radius. On the street, afternoon had shifted to the version of light that flattens faces but pops the color of taxis. Heat pressed a gentle thumb to the back of necks and asked to be acknowledged, not obeyed. The car door opened. Cool air touched their shins. After City Hall, Rebecca said, sliding in. We brief harbor on coalition terms, then we breathe for 10 minutes while legal files their nouns. Add one thing, Danielle said. She looked out at the intersection where the signal cycled red to green without checking whether anyone deserved it. Send a note to the hotel guard. Thank him for the step he moved. Already did, Rebecca said. He wrote back one line. I'll do it when nobody's filming. Danielle let that live in the car for a block. The street threw them into shade, then out again, fast enough to feel like a hand on the back. The office skyline receded like an honest horizon. They hit a red. The city paused and pretended to listen. Danielle reached into her bag, picked up the coalition draft, and slid it back beneath the lamplight in her mind. She could see it there even from the car. The circle pinning the sentence to the desk, making it heavier than paper and lighter than theater. Ready? Jonathan asked. For the quiet parts, she said. The light changed. The driver rolled them forward, smooth. No surge, no apology. Up in the office, the lamp burned on, a small, patient star holding the line until the sun decided whether it was done for the day. Evening pressed its face to the glass and fogged it. The city shifted colors, blue lifting off steel, orange settling into seams. On Danielle's desk, the brass lamp kept its circle, the way a heartbeat keeps its promise, unfancy, relentless, exact. Rebecca stood in the doorway with her tote on her shoulder. She didn't come in. She leaned. Coalition landed clean. 10 signed. 3 asked for commas. We gave them periods. Good, Danielle said. Her thumb rested on the paper edge until the skin learned its grain. A line in the center of the page carried the weight it had all day. We do not partner with humiliation. Harbor confirmed. Rebecca added, city's bridges held, not one blink at an intersection. The relief came out of her in a breath she hadn't noticed. She was holding. Any fires? Danielle asked. Only the kind you hire to burn hot and short. Rebecca said, PR wants you alive on camera at 5. I told them our electricity doesn't photobomb. Danielle smiled without showing teeth. The gesture looked like respect for a well-placed period. Send the building, she said. Elevators that work. Lunch that arrived. The lights that stayed on without applause. Rebecca tapped the doorframe twice. A private superstition she would deny if asked. Go home before the city remembers who you are, she said. She meant before someone asks for a quote and calls it gratitude. I'll lock behind me, Danielle said. Silence returned with its small, capable hands. Vents hummed. Phones slept like pets with a conscience. Somewhere down the corridor, a laugh snapped once and folded, the sound of a solved problem being filed. Her phone buzzed face down. Jonathan. Vendor lockout complete. Trademark block filed. Clean. Thank your people. She typed back 2 words. As planned, a second buzz. The number with no name she recognized by its grammar. Aaron. We're stepping aside. Respectfully. Temporarily. She replied with a sentence that made room for return without making room for compromise. Doors open. Standard stands. The lamp circle pinned a receipt, a memo, a scrap of Allison's text. 2 lines she'd written like a clothesline and left to steady in air. As work, lights on, Allison arrived at the threshold like she'd practiced not making entrances. Camera bag on one shoulder, thrift store jacket that didn't apologize. 2 minutes, she said. No camera. Ask, Danielle said. How do you want it remembered? Allison said. She stood with her hands in her pockets. Journalist playing human. She didn't take out a phone. As work, Danielle said. And for the girls. Allison asked, not soft, just careful. That one day, the lights were on, and we acted like it, Danielle said. Allison nodded once, as if something inside her clicked into a cleaner alignment. I'll let it be boring, she said. That's how it lasts. When she was gone, the room exhaled back to its original shape. Danielle crossed to the window and set her palm against the glass, warm where the day had laid its hand, cool where the air had started its night shift. Down on the plaza, a kid spun on the polished concrete, arms wide, catching the dusk with his mouth. A woman with a stroller laughed like she'd borrowed the sound from a happier version of herself. The phone chimed with a new sender unknown. Formal. Training request received. Monday, 8 a.m. Security and Guest Services joint session. No adjectives. Just schedule, she wrote back. We'll send materials. Hans, visible, ask names. Check the room. Then the pass. She turned the lamp off. The room did not go dark. The city poured its own steady down the glass and pooled it on the walnut. A quiet flood. She turned the lamp on again and watched the circle reclaim the desk like a lighthouse reclaiming a harbor. A courier knocked, apologized to the door for existing, and handed over a flat box from facilities. Inside, a simple crystal vase without flowers. A note clipped to its lip. For the Standard, she set it beside the lamp. It caught the circle and broke it into clean shards that landed across paper like small approvals. The quiet beat lengthened, traffic washed. Abu Sayyid. Inside, the copier down the hall spooled one last page and rested like a machine allowed to be proud. Danielle slid a drawer open and took out a photograph she kept without showing. Her mother at a kitchen table under the bare bulb of a rental, elbow on formica, hand around a pen, the light turned down to save the bill and still doing what it could. Danielle touched the corner of the photo, the way a person touches a blueprint before signing the loan. Her phone lit again. Councilman Regis. No headlines. Thanks for the bridges. She sent back 2 dots and a line. Keep them boring. He replied with a thumbs up, the kind men in his job use when they mean, I will. She let herself sit. Fatigue slid a coin under the eyelid. That honest burn priced into work. You wake up willing to do again. She didn't fight it. Wins that matter cost. The only question is whether you pay in pieces or all at once. The desk intercom crackled. The building manager cleared a throat that sounded like years of HVAC and bargaining with winter. Lights check, he said. We're doing the floors before we cut half the building to eco mode. You good? Good, Danielle said. Keep this floor on. You got it, he said. We'll fix the few that flicker. Always somewhere, she said. Always, he said, and clicked off. Both of them a little cheered by a problem that says its own name. She took the memo from the noon release and slid it under the circle until the lamp pinned the sentence like a specimen. We do not partner with humiliation. Read under tungsten. The black looked blacker. Under dusk. It looked like a line carved into glass. Phone again. This one from the hotel address, Security Wisthaven. Training packet received. Appreciate the clarity. I'll do it when nobody's filming. She wrote back. That's the point. Her reflection met her in the window and offered the wrong horizon. City beyond layered over her shoulder. The office behind fractaled into night. Somewhere, a sax bled 3 notes off a balcony and quit. The kind of flourish You forgive a building that worked all day. A soft double knock. Rebecca again. Tote now closed. Gaze in hunt. You're still here, she said. You're surprised, Danielle asked. Not since I learned to bring you dinner, Rebecca said, holding up a cardboard box that smelled like basil and burnt cheese. They ate from the box, with forks that bent. Salt made the water in the glass taste younger. They did not talk about the gala. They did not talk about any family's name. They talked about order forms and a new HR line item, and what to do with the annual party if a party ever felt honest again. Home, Rebecca said. Finally, before you confuse fatigue with purpose, Danielle set the fork down so it made the smallest bright sound and nodded. When the door clicked, the lamp kept its circle like a witness who refuses to leave the stand until the judge excuses them. She wrote a last note for morning, block letters neat as scaffolding, then stood, then didn't. One more loop around the desk with her eyes, the old builder's habit of checking, not for ghosts, for gaps. She switched the lamp off. The room let dusk hold it. She waited, the pause she'd taught herself to keep, to make sure it wasn't lying. No flicker. She flicked it back on and watched the circle return. Yes. In the hall, the janitor's bucket squeaked a tired wheel rhythm. He glanced in, nodded, kept moving. He had his own audit to complete. Danielle collected her bag. The coalition sheet slid inside like a blueprint in a sleeve, and walked to the door, hand on brass. She looked once back at the desk. Lamp. Vase catching the circle. Two glasses lined square on their coasters. The chair pushed in. She left it like that. A small scene with its own moral. Uncaptioned. The lobby waited with its large, expensive light that had been taught to behave as a chandelier, behaves steady, impartial, cruel to liars without ever saying a word. Security nodded a different guard with the same eyes. She nodded back. A private treaty between people who have learned to value small course corrections outside. The evening had flattened into a clean, hard surface. Buses bracketed the block. Tires hissed a polite rain that wasn't there. Across the street, a restaurant hung its pendant bulbs low, each a tiny sun pretending to keep a promise. Her car pulled to the curb. She didn't climb in yet. She looked up at the mirror of windows and found her office by the lamp's stubborn dot, a minor star pinned to the 90-something foot, an unromantic constellation, perhaps the only kind worth printing on a map. Allison texted a photo, a chandelier reflected in 100 phones, caption-free. Then another, a little girl under it, chin up, eyes wide, hands in the air like she'd discovered weather. She asked what the light is for. Allison wrote. Danielle typed and erased, typed and erased. She settled on. For seeing. Then added, and for being seen. The driver opened the door. Long day, he asked. They all are, she said, with no self-pity. She slid in. Leather side. The car rolled forward without jerk, merging into a river that didn't care about names and did care about timing. Behind her, the building kept its posture. At the corner, a red held them as a child, pressed a button and waited with theatrical patience. The signal flipped to walk. The child led the way like a person who had invented law. Danielle watched the bulb blink through the rain guard, a square promise fulfilled on schedule. The car turned. Her office lamp shrank to a dot, then vanished behind another geometry. The city took the job, the streetlights handled the rest. She did not look back again. The work didn't need her eyes on it to do what it was built for. The standard was installed and humming. The night opened, wide and ordinary. It made room for what comes next. And the light steady, plain, unashamed, stayed on.